Our lesson for this week is on vocabulary, and I'm going to move through these slides pretty quickly because I only have 15 minutes to record this and we have a lot of content to cover. First of all, make sure you check out Adam's presentation and activities that he has from your article from Engaging Adolescent Readers. So vocab, did you know? I'm going to give you just a few seconds to review this slide. And I'd like for you to review these questions and post your answers in thinking about your CT, what you see in regard to vocabulary instruction. These questions are posted on the discussion board for you to reflect upon. So we know that vocab is a good indicator of verbal ability as well as success in reading and comprehension in middle school and high school. We also know that vocab is one of the biggest tenets of text complexity and text difficulty. So we need to make sure we're teaching that vocabulary so we can improve that reading comprehension and being able to decode that text difficulty. And we need more than just a definitional knowledge. We have to be able to apply meaning. There are 4 types of vocab: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening being our largest of words that are heard. Speaking is words we use when speaking. Then reading, words we apply to text. And writing, words that we use in our own writing. And writing vocabulary is the smallest. We also want to determine the difference between academic vocabulary and content specific. So academic vocabulary are those words we often find in textbooks or use in academic dialogue. Not necessarily those words we use in everyday conversation. Content specific are those essential words that kids need to access the content in that content area. So we have to help them make connections to what they know and to the new information we're presenting. So we know that academic vocab is the language that we use in school and in textbooks. And we know that kids have to know this vocab to be successful in our content area. And we have to have explicit instruction so that we can get to the deeper understandings. We also know that academic vocabulary entails all 4 of those language areas: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And with students in high poverty background areas have less experience with academic vocabulary and concepts than those from more economically advantaged homes. When we think about the amount of words, we have to consider that students are learning new words in all 4 content areas. And some research recently showed us that 8 to 10 words a week for deep teaching is what students can handle cognitively. So that we need to be balancing that in all 4 of those content areas. We also know the tiered words, and we did discuss this last year, or last semester, so I'm hoping you kind of remember this and the activity that went with it. So tier 1 being those words that we just have in everyday interactions, tier 2 being the more academic words, and tier 3 being specific to content areas. If you'll remember last year, we did this in a group, so pause this video and see if you remember what tier each one of these words fell into. And here were our answers. Hopefully that's familiar to you. So we're going to step into Robert Marzano's 6 steps to build academic vocabulary. So what he tells us is we know that vocabulary is an important aspect of comprehension, and that we have to have systematic instruction of vocabulary. In order to determine a reasonable number of terms, we have to think about that if we taught 1 new term in each of the 4 subject areas for 30 weeks, it would be about 120 terms. We have to decide those terms that are critically important for the content that you're going to be teaching, and those can be selected from the standards or from the curriculum or from prepared lists. Oftentimes districts have lists. So we're going to walk through the 6 steps that Marzano uses in his vocabulary instruction. So the first being providing a description. So we're going to determine what students already know about the term, clarify any misconceptions, and build some initial understanding. And we can do that through the use of field trips, guest speakers, stories, videos, investigations, current events, think-alouds, clip art, and pictures. At this point, we're not going to provide them with a definition or have them look in the dictionary yet. That will come later. There's also a couple websites here. There's a YouTube video on teaching vocab as well as Vocab Head, which gives some great quick snippets of vocabulary videos that you can use for a lot of academic terms. Second is where students are going to restate their understanding of the word in their own terms. At this point, it doesn't need to be comprehensive because as we go through these 6 steps, they're going to be revisiting this definition and coming back and making it deeper. If they're struggling, you need to provide some more examples, have them talk about it a little bit, or have them move on through some of the steps and just help develop that deeper understanding. So here's an example of one of my students. We were talking about possession. If you are in possession of something, you have it because you got it or because it's yours. Next, you're going to have them construct a picture or a graphic representation of that word. This really gives them that non-linguistic connection. So if they feel like they can't draw, you can model it, show them some examples. They can even use clip art or things like that, just anything to represent the word. For students who tend to overdraw, you want to be sure and talk about what a quick draw is and the difference between a drawing and a sketch. And then for some of those more abstract terms, go ahead and check the internet or dramatize those. Most of the time if you go on Bing Images or Google Images, even if it's an abstract concept, there's some sort of visual representation of it that you can use. Step 4 is probably one of the most important, where you're going to engage in a lot of different activities. Because we know the more experience students have with a term, the deeper their understanding becomes. So you want to make sure you're engaging them explicitly with these vocabulary words. And then as they're doing this, again, they should be able to go back to that definition they did in step 2 and add or revise to their understanding of the term. Here also is a link to a teaching channel video on building student vocabulary that you can check out. Also in class, I gave you a packet of different review activities and games that could be used at this step. Step 5 is where they're discussing the terms with each other. So they're interacting and deepening their understanding of the terms. This could be like a think, pair, share, or in a few minutes I'm going to give you another construct with Dr. Anita Archer's work that could be used at this step. But you're going to be providing that opportunity for students again to revise or make additions to their understanding of the word. And step 6 is playing games with the terms. So making just fun games where they're doing matching, maybe matching pictures and definitions and words, memory games, those types of things, just to kind of keep their interaction with the word going. So you're going to have to block out some time for direct instruction, especially for steps 1 through 3, and then kind of decide how often you're going to do steps 4, 5, and 6. It'll take more time initially as students are learning those routines, but as they learn the routines, they'll be able to then apply the process a little more quickly. Also, you're going to want to be monitoring the accuracy. So whenever they're discussing or they're working in their notebooks, you're going to want to check those for clarity and accuracy. Listen or look for those misconceptions and confusions and clear those up right away, and then just encourage that collaboration so everybody's on the same page. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose one vocabulary from your content area and walk through this process. And I say post your framework because I'm not really looking for a specific lesson plan, but I'm looking for how you would address the 6 steps. So that's why I called it more of a framework. As we look at Dr. Anita Archer's vocabulary development, you may incorporate this process into your framework. So Dr. Archer uses the following slides, and this is a PowerPoint that she would use to introduce vocab to her students. So she's using the word possession. So like I said before, this could be in step 4, step 5, those areas. So using the word possession, she states that it's a noun, and she gives kind of a student-friendly definition. So if you are in possession of something, you have it because you've obtained it or because it belongs to you. So, and then synonyms, ownership or control. So you can see you wouldn't want this in step 1 or 2 because you kind of want them to be able to come up with, based on some different activities you've done and exposures, a basic definition, and this would be getting deeper into that definition. Then you're going to have some type of graphic and question. So that apply that vocab word. Are you in possession of any wristband like these? Why? You also give them a sentence stem for discussion so that they're putting into context appropriately, as well as providing them some formal academic language to use. I am in possession of one of these wristbands because I am not in possession of one of these wristbands because. Next, you're going to have more discussion. So you have this photo here. Why did the owner of this store name it Possession? Make sure you begin with the owner of the store named it Possession because. And they can again increase their knowledge of what possession might mean. The next part is where you're really looking at different forms of the root word and then applying them in a cohesive and coherent way. So here we're using the word possession, which is a noun, possess as a verb, possessing as a verb, and possessor as a noun. So the paragraph that's been created to combine all of these terms coherently is possession of weapons of mass destruction is a big responsibility for governments. To possess such devices can also be unsafe for our security. Groups who want to destroy our way of life dream about possessing this type of powerful weapon. The possessor of weapons of mass destruction must be extremely cautious. So again, taking that root word, applying it into different forms. So I want you to take that same vocab word that you did in Activity 1 and incorporate it into Dr. Archer's version of that. And again, you could use that as an activity for Part 4, Part 5, possibly even Part 6. I kind of see it fitting in more for Part 4 and Part 5 where you're doing activities and having discussions about the word. So next steps, you will be posting on the discussion board answers to your questions about how your CT develops vocab, as well as your lesson framework for the 6 steps and Anita Archer's framework as well. Next week, we will have 3 presentations, writing and disciplines. Writing across the disciplines, I think it is Adam will be working on that. Your research paper is due will be Tyler, and plagiarism prevention through teaching will be Drew. Have a great week.